Outsiders associate the Netherlands with many things. The windmills, of course, are very much in evidence, standing guard along the canal banks, as well as the canals themselves, as busy today as they've ever been, transporting goods in the long-established tradition of this tiny state, whose wealth in the 17th and 18th centuries was founded on its nautical genius. But even to the people of Holland, the concept of this nation having great houses is an unfamiliar one. For in truth, there are only a handful in the whole country that could warrant that description, of which Het Huys ten Donck is perhaps the most intriguing. Built 250 years ago as a day retreat from nearby Rotterdam for one of the wealthier merchants there, to visit Het Huys ten Donck today is to see a folly that has become one of the principal private houses in Europe and a gem of Rococo architecture. Its well-being today is ensured by 71-year-old Jonkheer F.W.E. Gronings van Zerlen, Pico to his friends, the direct descendant of the family that built Het Huys ten Donck out of their gains from that trading phenomenon, the Dutch East Indies Company.
The Dutch East India Company is a sort of name in the history books to most Europeans. But to the Dutch themselves, it's very important, isn't it?
The sea power in those days enabled the Dutch to extend their commercial activities, because, as you well know, the fault of the Dutch is giving too little and asking too much. And so we're a pretty canny lot. And all the influence and power of the Navy and seafaring was dedicated to commerce. And the Dutch East Indies Company was the largest commercial organization the world has ever seen between 1620 and 1800.
Mr. Gronings van Zerlen spends most of his time in Spain, having put the 250-year-old house in trust for his daughter. But he still takes enormous pride in the ancestral home, as well as in the ancestors themselves.
Those little coats of arms are simply the coats of arms of the families with whom we have intermarried in the course of the past 3 centuries. Of those, there are 12 who were also all shareholders in the Dutch East Indies Company. So all these families who had attained a certain position of affluence in Rotterdam intermarried and therefore kept a great deal of the riches that came in. They were distributed, and by good and serious marriages, they prospered.
So would you say that marriage was the second key to your family's well-being and wealth?
That's it, as it should be everywhere.
Such traditional views may stem from Mr. Gronings van Zerlen's aristocratic upbringing, but they're also testimony to his time as an officer in an exclusive British regiment during the Second World War. He retains his enthusiasm for all things British.
This room's got a wonderfully masculine feel about it. It's very much your room, isn't it?
Well, let's put it this way. It is very much my father's room, and I have seen no reason at all to vary it to any extent whatsoever. He was a man of infinite good taste. He spent a lot of time in England. He was there during the Edwardian heyday. When he came here and took over the house in 1926, he said, I must try and put some of the artistic feeling that goes into making a room as livable as possible also into the house. And he's made a typical smoking room of this.
And your wife has the complete opposite, really. It's down the other end of the main corridor here.
Hers is the lookout. This is the captain's cabin, and she is sitting in the bow of the ship because everything that takes place happens mainly through the kitchen door, which is below. She is sitting there as the lookout, and there's nothing that can happen with her not noticing. So everybody is in the right position. I am at the back of the ship trying to steer it, and she is making sure that we avoid the rocks.
A similar analogy, really. Your father, I read in his description of the house, that he saw this house as an old girl, a sort of old girlfriend, and that your family have had a love affair with this house for the past 250 years. Is that how you see it too?
Obviously, it is a sort of long-standing love-hate, because it's a hell of an imposition. Quite often one would be thankful to be rid of the whole damn thing. And on the other hand, it is so spectacularly comfortable and hospitable that you cannot face not doing everything you can to not only keep it up, but to improve it.
To fund the upkeep, the Gronings van Zerlens have dinners for up to 60 paying guests in their dining room 30 times a year. Outside caterers do the cooking, but the house has to be in perfect order. The direct responsibility of Madame Gronings van Zerlen.
Would you say that, apart from being a burden running this house, that you and your husband have some fun with it as well?
Well, I think actually the fun of this house is what it does to other people. It's not much fun for yourself, because it's so much work, and I don't mean, yes, also physical, but more, it's tiring, it's exhausting, because, well, one is busy with it all the time. It goes on even at night. I mean, sometimes I can't sleep. And when something is happening, for example, when you come the night before, so I'm thinking of all the things I still have to sort of have in the house. And it's very difficult because it's big, so you tend to forget something. And I think that my greatest pleasure in any case is seeing that other people enjoy it. And the more people come, the better, I think.
For Mr. Gronings van Zerlen, it's not just the revenue that attracts him to this sort of business.
I enjoy myself madly because I enforce myself usually to have a drink with the gentlemen before they go into dinner, and as a result I have met the people I would never have met otherwise, who are all extremely interesting, extremely interested in the fact that such a house still exists.
Have you had any disasters on these evenings?
So far, not. One of the aunts in the gallery was knocked over by a photographer, and I found her in the wastepaper basket, but an absolute genius has managed to put her all together again, and she's now whiter and better than she was before. Nothing has so far been pinched at all. It is a pleasure to leave everything as we have the house, so that when the people come here, they are simply taking over from us for that evening and not coming into a museum. That's frightfully important.
It certainly doesn't feel like a museum. The atmosphere is historic, yes, but in a timeless, elegant way. The internal windows are typically Dutch, typical of their keenness to throw as much light as possible into the inner rooms of the house. There are reminders of past generations, but this only adds to the feeling of continuity that one family's unbroken ownership and occupation gives to a home. From the outside, an unusual feature of the house is instantly visible. Most buildings of this vintage would have their main windows on the ground floor. At Het Huys ten Donck, this is impractical, because the dike, so essential for the survival of the house over the generations, cuts off any views from below the first level. Flood protection dictated the style of architecture.
Now, here we are. Charles, this is the main drawing room of the house.
Right.
This is obviously, from its shape and from its height, the room that the rest of the house was built around, and it's at this level, it's therefore on the first floor, so that the view from here will give you a complete view over the park at the back, and at the front will give you a view over the river on the other side of the dike. The stuc here is rather heavier simply because the room is bigger, but it was also made by the same Italians, the brothers Castoldi, who had done a lot of first-class work in The Hague. They then went to work in Rotterdam, where the builder of the house was a burgomaster, and so he probably said to them, when I make this country retreat. Please come, because you've done such wonderful work, and put it into effect in my new house. The cedar pots are also extremely good, but we don't know who painted them, but they are in the style of a man called De Witt. They had gone completely yellow, but we had them cleaned and re-backed between 67 and 70, and they've come back, and now they're really very attractive. The paneling is very light carving, it's extremely good, and luckily we did not have to re-gilt it, because this is still the original gilt gold leaf that went on it 250 years ago, whereas if you go to a house where it has just recently been done, you'll find it's all much too glittery and looks much too new.
Garish.
Garish, exactly. Because the way the room is now is probably far more attractive than when it was just new, because as you were just rightly saying, it was then a little garish.
Fortunately for the 300 families in Holland that still own houses with outstanding history or beauty, the Dutch government gives them tax concessions and grants, which are crucial if such properties are to remain intact in private hands. The park behind Het Huys ten Donck is an oasis of countryside in the overcrowded suburbs of Rotterdam, an extremely rare chunk of unspoilt land in a country that struggles with the demands of an ever-expanding population.
Well, that is one of the main troubles, is that we are, I think with Belgium, the most overpopulated country in Europe, and therefore the pressure on an estate like this is immense, because all these villages and all these satellite towns have only one idea: they want to expand all the time, and you've got to be very careful that they don't do it at the cost of the very few remaining green zone that there is.
Yes. It's absolutely beautiful. The green sentry boxes, what are they designed for?
Well, the green sentry boxes have my wife's design, because inside there are two splendid vases that we found in England, but in the winter we want to protect them.
Oh,
but our local painter luckily I had the idea from a blown-up photograph of making the outline of what is inside, and he put in the shadows, so in fact, even during the winter, you have the pleasure of seeing what is in fact inside, and so do the people who walk through the park.
Very clever, very clever. And really one gardener looks after all of this, does he?
One gardener does his best to look after all of this and manages fairly adequately, but there should be 3 gardeners.
In the park are features that hark back to past fashions. The Romantic era led to the Folly being built in 1781 as a ruin, with even the statues being made headless to add to the sense of antiquity. The heavy clay soil is perfect for growing huge beech trees, aided by a system of waterways through the park that keeps the water level constant throughout the year. The trees hide another surprise.
Well, now we come to the Windy House. It was built in 1808 because my great-grandfather, in his diary, notes that he came back to the Donck after a disagreeable winter where the children had smallpox, and when he got here, he decided to build this little imitation farmhouse.
It's charming,
It's a small small farmhouse. It's got a room in the front,
yes,
with a stove. There's a little stable at the back where you can put a pony in,
right,
and there's a loft where one can sleep in.
right.
So it's a sort of small addition of a local farmhouse.
The pride that Mr. Gronings van Zerlen has for the house is mirrored by the enjoyment he gets from the park. To him, they are one unit.
The park is just as important historically and also for this area as the house. The house without the park or to part without the house would make no sense at all.
Neither would keeping Het Huys ten Donck going, unless he was reasonably certain that his labours, keeping everything in good repair, including his beloved 16th century clock, were not to be squandered by the next generation.
Now, any minute now.
Mr. Gronings van Zerlen's aware that his custodianship of the house cannot go on indefinitely, and his daughter Katerina is still only 20.
I think she is quite enthusiastic, but there is no way the poor child can have any idea of what a continual dedication to detail it involves. The great mistake has been getting married too late. And that means, of course, that inevitably I am running out of time, and 50 years between daughter and father is too large a gap. She should get married at a reasonable age, somewhere between 25 and 30, and find a gentleman between 35 and 40, and get on with it.
Born in Spain, educated in Switzerland and England, currently at university in Leiden and shortly off to Russia, cosmopolitan Katerina clearly takes her inheritance in her stride.
People appreciate it a lot. When I bring friends, they're like, wow, wow, you know, how nice, and I'm like, yes, well, you know, and I'm pretending like it's no big deal, of course, but no, it's nice, because it gives you space to do things with your friends. You can have nice dinners and just, I don't know, enjoy it. No, it's not at all a problem, no.
What about the thought that this will one day be your responsibility?
Well, it's quite a responsibility. No, it's, I used to think differently about it, but now I've realized that it's actually really something quite special. It's, in Holland, it hardly doesn't, I mean, it doesn't exist anymore, something like this. And the idea of finding ways of keeping it up, which is not maybe always as easy, is quite an interesting thought as such. I mean, now it's very popular because people come and get married and have pictures taken or meetings, whatever that, you know, it's a good way of keeping it going without actually having anything done to the house.
All of which is reassuring news for Mr. Gronings van Zerlen, although he's aware that public opinion in Holland, especially in the local area of Ridderkerk, can also play an important part in the future of Het Huys ten Donck, for it is, in the final analysis, the people's taxes that keep this house financially afloat.
Do you find that local people are proud of this house, or do they resent it?
15 years ago, they looked at you very much askance that you even considered living in a house like this, and even worse from their point of view, that you seem to enjoy doing so. Nowadays, these people all have a second house in France, they have a large boat somewhere else. They realize that instead of dividing our activities so that they would be more pleasurable, we are basically doing our duty by staying put.
Het Huys ten Donck has a charm and a modesty that many great houses lack. Instead of opulence, it has good taste. Beautiful objects complement the perfect proportions of the room. Originally designed to be much grander, it's the understated simplicity of it all that is so seductive. And beyond that, there's a sense of tradition about the house that 2.5 centuries of Gronings van Zerlen have imparted. Amongst all the historic objects that fill this house, you'd think it'd be hard to pick out one as a favourite.
One of my favorites is what you see here in the picture of the son of the builder of the house is the fact that he's holding in his left hand, he is holding a book. So the book must have been important to him. And in fact, it was his guest book. And we are fortunate in having the same book here from the family archive. And we know it's the same because you can see from the binding that it is obviously that same little book. And it was started in 1765. He took over this rather flashy house in those days, and the first one to sign the book is his brother-in-law, and you see this date, 1765. And everybody who's come to the house since then, we've kept up the tradition, and they always sign in the guest book. They're now the 7th.
The custom of giving departure from Het Huys ten Donck a sense of occasion remains equally important today.
Charles, if you come in here in the dining room, we can reenact perhaps a good custom to round off your happy visit. This is the second of the guest books, the first one we saw upstairs, and it says, and it starts off in the same way, name list of those who have honored the house with their presence and have drunk to the long-lasting welfare of the house from this goblet. Charles, would you do me the pleasure of perhaps doing the same?
Well, with great pleasure, and thank you very much for showing your exquisite house. And if I may, I'll drink to another 250 years of a fantastic home.
Thank you very much. Lovely.